Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 4, Section 7 of A Course in Miracle, Creation and Communications. It is the last section of Chapter 4 that we are finishing out before the end of the year, and I'm excited. It's got some good stuff in there. So just before we begin, wherever you are, go ahead and take a deep breath, and we'll do our opening preparation together. And just repeat silently to yourself after me. I dedicate this time to healing my mind and awakening to my true nature. I surrender to the source of love within me and let it guide my way. As I do this mind healing work, I'm willing to be mindful of my thoughts without judgment. I'm willing to look at how I view my life circumstances as helpful feedback. I'm willing to take responsibility for letting go of limiting thoughts and beliefs. I am willing to let go of judgments about myself and others. I am willing to quiet my mind and ask Holy Spirit to take the lead. I am willing to let go of tension. I soften and imagine the Holy Spirit leading me into peace. My aware self leads me as I now focus on healing my mind. Beautiful. All right, so I have a copy of the course, and I also have the message of A Course in Miracles in plain text. So I'm going to be reading a lot and then giving you a couple of things to think about for each one of these sections. So let's start with paragraph 1. Creation and Communication, Chapter 4, Section 7. It is clear that while the content of any particular ego illusion does not matter, its correction is far more helpful in specific context. Ego illusions are quite specific, although the mind is naturally abstract. Part of the mind becomes concrete, however, when it splits. The concrete part believes in the ego because the ego depends on the concrete. The ego is the part of the mind that believes your existence is defined by separation. And from the plain language, the content of the personal self's life in the world that you perceive does not matter. But correction of your perception and separation from God is only meaningful to you in the context of the individual life that you perceive as yours. Through God's mind, though God's mind is abstract and it is therefore everywhere, the personal mind with which you identify, being the opposite of God, is very concrete, and its illusions are very specific. Your split mind, which believes in a personal self as your reality, believes your existence is defined by separation. All right, I don't know if you guys can hear my phone ringing. Forgot to turn that off, so I apologize. So let's talk about this section over here. So we're talking about our personal mind versus God's mind, and that the mind of oneness that we're all part of and we're all connected with together. So this whole chapter is about communication. It's about creation. It's about giving and receiving God's love, which is creation, and it's also God's communication. And in paragraph 1, it's talking about the specific issues we have. Course in Miracles says, you think you have many issues, but in reality, you only have one issue, and that's your separation from God, and also your separation from each other. This belief in separation, this belief in specialness, this belief that we're different, that's the cause of all our problems. And we talk about that all the time. So we go, yep, yeah, I got that. That makes sense. We're one. I'm part of God. I've got all this power. I understand that. But, I'm still having this problem. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills this month. that's got nothing to do with that oneness stuff. This is just a separate problem I've got. All problems are the same problems, which is your separation from source, your separation from each other. So if we had true trust, and if we knew exactly who we are, we wouldn't really worry that much about our bills getting paid. We'd know that the miracle would come at the perfect time, or it wouldn't come, and that would be the miracle, because we'd have some life experience that we're supposed to have by not being able to pay our bills. But we as humans, using our ego mind, goes, no, I get all that. It's just that I really need a job. And that's not the spiritual stuff. It's just the job stuff. Like, I hate my job and I need a new job. And we try to separate these things out and make them very specific. Your ego mind makes it very specific. No, I love everybody. I believe in oneness. And like, I feel really good about all this stuff. It's just I have this one little problem, and it's just its own separate thing. Every problem you've got is your lack of trust in God. It's your lack of awareness of who you really are. It's your lack of trust in your brother. It's your lack of trust in the fact that, of course, everything's going to work out for you. That's what you're down here to do. How could it not work out for you? And all of us suffer from it, because that's what the ego mind does. It tries to make those things separate. So that's really the big point of this. So when you start in A Course in Miracles, ask for a miracle for your specific problem. That's how you start. Remember in the last chapter, we don't try to bully the ego mind. It doesn't work that way. But address it using a miracle mindedness. So if you're worried about your job, ask for the miracle in your job. If you're worried about money, ask for the miracle in your money. Make that very specific. Use God's abstractness, his love, his creation, which you're part of. Remember, we're the faucet and the water flows through the faucet. Marianne Williamson, I love that analogy. We're the faucet. Ask for that water to flow onto job. Even though the truth is that water, as it just flows, it touches job, it touches relationships, it touches it all. That's just what that does. You don't actually have water flowing, it just covers everything equally. That's what water does. But that abstractness is too much for us at the beginning. So we say, no, I'm going to have my water flow on my job. And that's a perfectly okay way to start. It's a step in the right direction. I need a miracle in the area of my life I call job. In the area of my life I call health. In the area of my life I call money. The area of my life I call relationship. That's where I need the miracle. And once you start to see, you'll get the miracles in that area and other areas and all kinds of areas you're getting the miracle. It's all the same. You have one problem, which is your lack of connection to source, to who you really are. And once you remember that, whether you get the miracle in health or you get the miracle in money, or you get the miracle in both health and money, it reminds you who you are, it reminds you what your potential, and it creates that connection, which is also communication. Connection and communication, because communication is just letting God's love flow. So that's the point in paragraph 1. Talks about the abstract mind. God's mind thinks in abstract. God's mind doesn't think about your specific job. There's only one thing you're here to do, and that's spread love. And you might spread love being a doctor. You might spread love just walking down the street smiling at someone. Makes no difference to God. There's only one job here, and that's to spread love. You're going to get taken care of whether you're a doctor or whether you just walk down the street and smile at people. But you have to know that about yourself. God already knows that. It's us that are slow to catch up on the fact that we're going to be taken care of no matter what. We are actually in this moment already being taken care of. We have just chosen to connect with our ego mind and say, yeah, no, I think I'm being taken care of. It's just that this isn't resolved, so I might not be being taken care of. That's an ego thought system, not how God works. Paragraph 2. Everything the ego perceives is a separate whole without the relationships that imply being. The ego is thus against communication, except insofar as it is utilized to establish separateness rather than to abolish it. The communication system of the ego is based on its own thought system, as is everything else it dictates. Its communication is controlled by its need to protect itself, and it will disrupt communication when it experiences threat. Remember, God's love, threat to the ego. This disruption is a reaction to a specific person or persons. The specificity of the ego's thinking, then, results in spurious generalization, which is really not abstract at all. It merely responds in certain specific ways to everything it perceives as related. We're talking about projection there. Everything, it reacts in certain ways, everything it sees as related, i.e. your mind has perceptions and then it projects. Every time somebody acts a certain way, it reminds you of that woman, your coworker who used to be rude to you, and so therefore that person's a bad person and they're out to get you, blah, blah, blah. You're just projecting an old life experience onto the situation. All right, from plain text, paragraph 2. The personal mind perceives many separate things that are whole in themselves, but never in one being. It will join with other personal selves as long as their joining reinforces its separateness. If it perceives a threat to its separateness, it will break off the communication. It'll break off the connection, excuse me. Its reactions are always to specifics, and though it can generalize by noting similarities among others and among situations, it is not capable of real abstract thinking, which perceives oneness. The closest that the personal mind comes to abstract thinking is responding to specific persons or situations as though they are other specific persons or situations which they resemble, i.e. projection. All right, so in this paragraph, so let's talk about being versus doing. Okay, so your ego wants to keep you into the doing, okay, into the specifics. He did this, they did that. This isn't God's love because this is happening, that's happening, and wants to show you that on a doing level, you're separate. I raised my hand right now. You're not raising your hand, so therefore we're separate. My hand's up, your hand's not up. I'm different from you. But on a being level, we are actually connected. And when I was reading this, it made me think of all the continents. And I learned when I was a little kid that all the continents, if you go way under the oceans, all of the continents are connected. And I thought that that was the coolest thing ever, that we have these separate continents, but they're not really separate continents, because if you go far enough down, eventually all the land is connected to all the other land. How interesting. It's all just one. And we talk about this separation, and it comes up a lot in this about, the different sons of God, but one sonship. And I think about it as that landmass. It's all one landmass, but it comes across in different places as these separate land masses. So we perceive them as separate, but they're not separate. They're all just one. So on a being plane, we are all connected, that we are all in relationship to one another. So somebody you have never actually physically met yet in this world has been impacted by something you've done or said somewhere. Maybe it's you said something to somebody else and they said, my friend said blah, blah, blah to me, and then that got passed on to them, or passed on to a friend, who passed on to a friend, who passed on to a friend. Maybe it's just something good you did. Maybe you planted a tree when you were a kid somewhere, and that person happened to visit that spot and just sit and admire that, to sit under that tree and enjoy a moment of shade under the tree that you planted years and years ago. There are so many ways that we are connected, that we have relationships to one another that we may never know about on a conscious physical level. But it does not mean that that connection is not there. And it's like the butterfly effect. I know you all are probably pretty familiar about this, but how a butterfly flaps its wings in one place can decide if there's a hurricane or a tornado someplace else. We are all so deeply connected on a being level. We're just not aware of it, because we don't see it on a doing level. You think, what could I have in common with that person so far away from me with such different life experiences than me? But on some level, if we actually look for it, we're connected. And I know you all have probably had that experience with people that you think, me and this person have nothing in common. And you sit down and you talk and you find out all these crazy things you have in common. When I met Mike, there were so many things. Like, we both wanted to go to Russia when we were kids. Like, we both studied it and were like really into it. We grew up in totally different places, totally different life experiences. Something just so random like that. It's just such a minor detail in life, but it was something that in middle school we were both very passionate about. Who knew? So we have all these interesting and unique connections with each other, some that you might find out about, but there's so many that you might never actually know about. So we're talking about that. Now, the last part of this is we think all these things are different. and we're seeing things through projection. And so then we're seeing things through perception. And because we see things through our perception, we unmeaningly project onto others. So we make connections where there aren't connections. We see things in people based on the life experience we've had. I use this example all the time. You go to a party, you meet someone, you think they're the coolest person ever, you come and introduce them to your best friend, who obviously is going to think they're the coolest person ever because you think they're the coolest person ever. Your best friend takes one look at them and goes, I can't stand her. And you're like, maybe you can't stand, she's so cool, she's awesome, I love, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because something in that person triggered something in your best friend's past that you don't share with your best friend. You didn't get triggered in that same way. So there's something that is being projected onto this person. Never met the person. And this happens with us too. I meet people and I'm like, I just don't like that person. Why do you? I don't know. I don't want to hang out with them anymore. Well, what did they say to you? Nothing. Actually, very nice to me. I mean, if I had to be honest, they seemed nice and polite. I just don't like them. I don't know why I don't like them. Projection. We're projecting something. They remind you of someone. Their chin is the same chin of the kid who bullied you in elementary school. Whatever it is. There's been so many studies done about this. Who knows what it is? But what we need to understand is it's just projection. Because that person who I don't want to be friends with is one with me. On a being level, we're connected. We're part of one sonship. That's the reality. That's the truth with a capital T. All right, paragraph 3. In contrast, spirit reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else. Nor does it make any attempt to establish what is true. It knows that what is true is everything that God created. It is complete and direct communication. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation because it is in complete and direct communication with its creator. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. God created every mind by communicating his mind into it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. Since only beings of a like order can truly communicate, his creations naturally communicate with him and like him. This communication is perfectly abstract, since its quality is universal in application and not subject to any judgment, any exception, or any alteration. God created you by this and for this. The mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with functions it is not given. That is why the mind cannot totally lose the ability to communicate, even though it may refuse to utilize it on behalf of its being. Oh, so much good stuff in that one. Okay, plain text before I jump in and start talking. The Holy Spirit, on the other hand, sees only oneness. It does not try to establish a reality apart from God. It knows it is one with you and with God. God is in your mind, and your oneness with God is everywhere and always. It cannot be changed. Your oneness with God is your only purpose. You can distort this purpose, and you can choose to be unaware of it, but you cannot change it. All right. So, creation, communication. So, God's communication, Spirit's communication, Holy Spirit's communication, God's communication, the water that flows through the faucet, which is you, that's communication. It's also creation. They're synonymous. Basically, you only have one job here, which is to give, or two jobs, I guess, to give and to receive God's love. That's it. And we're going to talk at the last paragraph again. It comes back to your brother. We're all in this together. So you're either giving love to your brother or you're receiving love from your brother. And that's how you're in the perfect cycle of God's love. That's the cycle of the water running through the faucet. That is your only purpose here. So Spirit doesn't respond to what is not true because it doesn't need to. The way that the ego, it's like exact opposites. The way that the ego protects you from hearing anything from the Spirit because it's so worried, it's always vigilant. It doesn't want you to feel this oneness. It doesn't want you to feel this connection. In the exact opposite sense, the Spirit doesn't even notice the ego. It doesn't even have any awareness of the ego. The ego doesn't even exist in the world of the spirit. It's so past all that, it doesn't even matter to it. So if you want to connect with the ego, spirit's like, whatever, I'm hanging out, I'm still here. Whenever you're ready, come back to me. Everything's cool on my part. Right? Spirit's not in competition with the ego. It doesn't even, not even aware that the ego exists. Ego, on the other hand, is constantly on the lookout for spirit and making sure you don't connect to spirit. But at the same time, it doesn't want to acknowledge spirit. Remember that from our last lesson. It doesn't want to acknowledge spirit, so it just keeps you confused. So you never know exactly what's going on. That's what the ego does. Okay. It knows that what is true is everything that God created. It makes me think of Byron Katie. And how do I know this should be happening? Because it's happening. So, and how do I know it's bad? Can I be absolutely sure it's bad? No. All of these things, Byron Katie, the work, that's what that makes me think of. If it's happening, it's from God. If it's created, it's from God. Spirit doesn't sweat it. If it's happening, it's meant to happen. Something good's going to come from it. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation because it's in direct communication with God. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. Every time you do something with the purpose of creating more love in the world, using your unique skills and talents to build or to create, you are implementing the will of God. So for some person, it might be performing surgeries. For some person, it might be sweeping up trash on the street. For some person, it might be raising a child. For some person, it could be anything. It could be making homemade cards. Whatever it is, when they call it like the spirit within you, you're so in love and enjoy doing what you're doing. You're not doing it for the paycheck. You're not doing it for another person. You're doing it because you love to do it. You are implementing God's will. You're creating with love. You are giving love out into the world. That's it. Which is why I feel so strongly that if you hate what you're doing, really look at that, because you're meant to be doing something else. You're meant to be in that state of joy. We need you there. We need you at your command post. Because if you're at some other command post and it doesn't feel right and it's not good and it's not the right command post for you, your command post is empty. And you are meant to be at your command post. I'm meant to be at mine. And together we're one sonship. So I'm not telling you to quit your job. Just want you to think about the fact that there is a reason you love the things you love. My sister says to me all the time, she says, there's a reason that you love speaking in public. You're meant to do something with this. You love it so much. There's a reason you love it so much. Not everybody loves it so much. A lot of people are scared to death of it. We'll talk about self-compassion. This is part of self-compassion. You learn, like, this is part of who I am. There's things I've got within me, and there's a reason. I might not know what that reason is. I can't grasp it at the moment, but it still exists. That reason is there. There's something within me. So that is the creation and the communication that's happening over there. God created you by this, line 10. God created you by this and for this. His communication is perfectly abstract since its quality is universal in application and not subject to judgment, any exception or any alteration. The mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with functions it was not given. That is why the mind cannot lose its ability to communicate, even though it might refuse to utilize it on behalf of being. So you can turn the faucet off and not let love come through you, but the water is still there. All you gotta do is turn the faucet back on. So you can choose to turn the water off and block God's love from going through you. You can choose to not be the vessel for that love, but it doesn't mean that the love's not there. All you gotta do is turn the handle and it's there, but that's free will. That's your choice. The Course in Miracles term. Okay, paragraph 4. Existence as well as being rests on communication. Existence, however, is specific in how, what, and with whom communication is judged to be worth undertaking. Being is completely without these distinctions. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. To whatever extent you permit the state to be curtailed, you are limiting your sense of your own reality, which becomes total only by recognizing all reality in the glorious context of its real relationship to you. This is your reality. Do not desecrate it or recoil from it. It is your real home, your real temple, and your real self. Plain text, paragraph 4. The personal mind and the Holy Spirit cannot join in you. Your split mind maintains your perception of separation from God by disassociating your Christ mind. It denies your natural impulse to extend God's love. The personal mind does not do this, but your identification with the personal mind is the means that your split mind uses to maintain your belief that the separation is real. It is your decision to identify with the personal mind that allows this belief to continue. We talked about that in the last section too. Your ego doesn't have that power over you. It's just your belief that you're separate. It's every situation where you don't even wish negative on somebody, or you don't hate them. It's not even that strong. You just look at somebody and go, oh, what a moron. That's making your ego real. We want to get to a point where every single person we see, we go, wow, that's one of God's most beautiful creations. That mindset is a different mindset. That's the mindset we're going for. Doesn't matter what the person is doing. Because we want to be like Spirit. We don't even want to see what the person's doing. We want to be blind to it. I have people like this in my life. I don't know how they do it, but it's like people say mean things to them. They just don't see it. It's like they're just not even aware of it. They're so deep within themselves. They're so connected. They're so oblivious. We call them oblivious and naive. We have all these words for them. They're at peace because other people's behavior just does not impact them. You can say something negative right to their face and it's like they really don't understand what you're doing. They don't see the meanness. They're just clueless about these things and at peace. We're trying to become clueless human beings. And by becoming clueless, we're actually becoming so clued in. That's the way for us to become clued in. All right, so let's talk about this. Existence as well as being rest on communication. In section 3, we talked about existence. We talked about the ego offers you temporary existence, while the spirit offers you never-ending being, eternal being. So again, the words existence and being, how they're being used here in the course. Existence is this temporary body. You're here 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, and then it's over. I don't know why we were here. I don't know what this was about. I existed, now I ceased to exist. That's the end of the party. Being is, I'm a soul that's housed within this body. This body may not continue on, but my soul never ends. That's being. It's of the spirit. Existence is of the ego. Existence talks about the specifics of who you communicate, who's worthy of your communication, who should you be spending time with, who deserves your love. Well, I have this water coming out of my faucet. Where do I want that water to go? That's existence. Being says, I've got this water. I know that the perfect people and the perfect time and the perfect situation will come and be covered with this water. I don't have to worry about it. I don't even have to think about it. It's taken care of for me. So whichever one you recognize with are the experiences that you're going to have. And one of the things I want to say over here is that your being, that water flowing through you, you don't have to do anything for that. If the water that needs to flow out of you is to perform brain surgeries, you will be fascinated in the brain from the time you were young. You'll be into it. You're going to love every bit of it, blah, blah. The water that needs to flow through you will flow. It just flows through you. You don't have to do anything. I'm thinking about a couple of people in our group. Okay, let me use Holly as an example because she's so well known to almost everybody in our group. So Holly and her love of cats. This brings so much joy to people. You don't even have to be a cat person to have joy in Holly's presence and her love of cats. She's got that thing. She's like, is she funny? I mean, she's funny, but she's sweet, but she's just Holly. I could find some adjectives, but it's like, unless you just know Holly's just Holly, and her existence brings joy to people. It's not because she talks about cats. She could be talking about anything under the sun, and you get that same feeling. So it's not like, oh, Holly uses the faucet because of cats. Right, which is what we do. We do that about our jobs or our roles or identities. But the truth is, Amina, brings Amina to every situation, whether I'm in a board meeting or I'm doing these videos or I'm just hanging on the couch with my husband. I'm bringing that same faucet of water wherever I go. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing or what I'm talking about, or if I'm giving a formal presentation or if I'm just hanging out on the couch. That beingness, that's me, that's the gift. That's the gift. That's your purpose on life. Your purpose on life is to just bring you to the situation. It's not the knowledge you have. It's not the skills you have. It's the you-ness that goes with those knowledge and skills and creates, that makes that communication. But that communication is just you. It's just the water that flows through you. I hope this is making sense, because this is a big, big concept, and it makes life so much easier. It makes life so much easier. You just got to bring you, the real you, the authentic real you, not the version of you think this situation needs. The real you to this situation, and you're spreading God's love. That's how it works. It's pretty easy when you realize what it is you have to do and stop trying to do all the things you think you're supposed to be doing to spread God's love. Well, I think I need to spread God's love by being a doctor, so I better go to med school, I better blah, blah, blah. But wait, I don't even like any of this stuff. That's not how you spread God's love. No, 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 no. You're just supposed to be the one who walks around the halls with a big red nose, making everybody laugh. That's how you're supposed to heal, right? Or you're the one who's supposed to write those amazing poems. That's how you're, or crochet those beautiful blankets that people wrap around themselves when they're not feeling good. That's how you help people heal. But whatever that is, it's the you thing. I'm not supposed to crochet blankets. I'm not a blanket crocheter, but maybe you are. I'm not the red nose person, but maybe you are. I'm the one who gets up on stage and talks to a whole group of people. Maybe that's not who you are. So we just bring our own selves out. And that's our job. That's how we communicate. We create and we communicate. And that create, it's just that thing you do. You can't help but to do it. It just brings you so much joy. That creation, when you're creating, when you're crocheting, in that place of just pure joy and peace, and you're just happy, that's you communicating God's love. Every stitch has God's love in it. Every time I'm up on stage, just the words that come out of my mouth are God's love just spreading out over the audience, because I'm so happy doing it. It's not because I chose the perfect words. So that's how this whole thing works. So truly honor your joy. You guys know I'm a joy person. Honor your joy, because your joy is the indicator God's given you as to what your job is here on how to spread his love. Okay, done preaching. Moving on. Paragraph 5. Let me check. Okay, last thing on paragraph 4. Spirit communicates with all without distinction. Ego, through perceptions, hears only who it wants. So I want to give an example of this today. Somebody told me something today that I didn't agree with. It wasn't the new. I have a belief system. It went against my belief system, but it's somebody I love, and somebody who I respect, and somebody who I really admire. So I was really agitated because somebody I love and respect and admire, who tells me stuff normally I listen to and go, oh my God, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for letting me know. Said something and it wasn't what I wanted to be true. And all of a sudden I found myself agitated, and I was asking God, like, I've been sitting with God a lot more, I feel like, from doing the course, and I asked God, I was like, why? That was such a weird, and was the thing we talked about was such a bizarre topic of conversation. I don't even know how it came up. Actually, I do know how it came up. She very specifically wanted to talk to me about this. And it's just so weird. I said, God, why did that happen? Why, what was that all about? Then I started prepping for this course, and I realized if I hear something that I don't want to hear, my ego just wants me to dismiss it, because I don't want to hear that. And it's hard to dismiss it because I really love this person. I admire this person. I think what they have to say makes sense. So my ego became really agitated. But on the spirit level, none of that matters. It's just love. She said something, and I thought, after reading this section, I thought, I should go research my view on this topic, because maybe I'm misguided, or maybe I'm just going to learn more to feel even stronger about my view. I don't know. But it made me just, how quickly the ego just wanted to discredit the view and the person. I didn't want to hear it, so I just started to block it out. And if I hadn't sat with God and said, what was that about? Because I know now everything that happened, every random comment someone makes to me, it's for my healing. I know that now. So if I don't sit and say, what the heck was that about? That was so weird. And it felt very strongly to tell me this. Why? Why do you want to tell me this so badly? If I don't sit with that and ask, I might miss the lesson. So spirit communicates with everybody. It's constantly communicating. That was spirit trying to give me a message. Maybe that's something I really need to know. Maybe I was being warned. She was warning me about something. Maybe that's a warning I really need to heed. Spirit's constantly communicating. It's the ego that decides what's worthy of you hearing, what's worthy of you taking action on. But you got to think about it. I say this to people all the time. The fact that you're watching this video right at this moment, I mean, think about all the things that had to happen that got you here to this moment right now. It's mind-blowing. There's a reason you're hearing this at this moment. None of this is an accident. The person in traffic who's rude to you, I mean, what are the chances that your car would end up next to that car? There's a reason for that. There's a healing in that for you. There's something to be seen. You don't have to figure it out. That's what the ego wants to do, is figure it out. You just ask God, what's the purpose for this? Show me how this can help me heal. Look at me getting really annoyed at this car that's being rude. What can I learn from this? What can I do with this? So I thought that was interesting. Okay, now paragraph 5 for real. God, who encompasses all being, created beings who have everything individually, but who want to share it to increase their joy. Nothing real can be increased except by sharing. That is why God created you. Divine abstraction takes joy in sharing. That is what creation means. How, what, and to whom is irrelevant, because real creation gives everything, since it can create only like itself. Remember that in the kingdom, there is no difference between having and being, as there is in existence. In the state of being, the mind gives everything always. Plain text paragraph 5. You threw away your awareness of your oneness with God because you did not value it. Oops, I did this last time too. Redo. Paragraph 5 of the correct section. Even in your perceived separate state, you have not stopped being one with God's beings, in which you have everything, and in which you extend God's being to increase your joy. God extends God everywhere and always, and this is how you are one with God. This is what creation is. There is no how or with what or to whom in oneness. Remember, in God, there's no difference between having and being. In God, you give God always. Okay, so think about the things that you just naturally give away without even thinking about it. And I'll give you an example from my life. I smile a lot at everybody all the time. I smile because I like smiling. So I'm giving it away because I don't even know how to not give that away. I remember I was in a situation, a culture where I was told that, smiling gives off. If you just randomly start smiling at people, it kind of gives off the wrong message. And to, maybe not break into a huge grin every time I see people. And it was torture, you all. It was so hard for me. I really felt like half the time I'd put something like this because I was so afraid. I can't help it. I just smile and smile. I can't even think. I'm not even thinking about it. It's just what I give. It's just easy for me to give that. Think about the things that you do. Go back to crocheting or teaching for me. I just give. It doesn't feel like I'm giving anything when I'm doing this. It just brings me so much joy. I just would give it even if I didn't have to give it, or even though no one paid me. I just do it. This is just what I do. That is extending God's love. It's just what you do. I talked about it a lot earlier, but this is another example. We're coming back to saying this again. You give it because you want to increase your joy. You share because it brings you joy to share your joy with another human being. And by sharing this joy, that's how you, very much manifesting here, that's how you reinforce the fact that you have. By giving, you reinforce that you have it. You reinforce that it's yours. You reinforce that you're one with it. So as you give, so shall you receive. We're being that and it gives more of it to us. It doesn't matter who you give it to or how, or, I really like making people happy. Should I smile at people on the street? You don't have to worry about any of that. It's really it gets a lot easier when you set your intention. Every morning you set your intention to be of use to God, to be God's love in the world. The rest of it, you just don't have to worry. They're all the details. The who you need to do it with are the people who show up in your life that day. That's who. That's your ministry. Lori always told me the people you'll minister to are the ones that show up. Those are the people that you're the minister for. It's so easy. You don't have to go out and say, hi, can I be your minister? My name's Amina. I teach Course in Miracles. May I be your minister? No. The people who show up, those are your people. And they're not somebody else's people. And for all of you who will turn around and talk about this course to other people, those are your people. And it's just easy. It's just everything just goes in this flow. I love to talk about flow. It all just goes straight in the flow. Okay, my notes. Okay, we are one sonship made up of different sons as one connected mass. This is what I was talking about earlier about the continents. Sharing God's love and receiving God's shared love, that's our only job here. And sharing, creation, and communication of God's love, that's all we're here to do. So when we are creating, we create by using God's love, and we share that with other people, which is extending God's love. And our whole form of communication is just by giving love and by also receiving love. So it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what. That's all we're doing here is creating, communicating, and it's all one thing. I say it as like separate steps, but it's all just one. Have you ever watched somebody work and they didn't know you were watching them work? And they're just intent, they're just creating for their own sake. They're lost in they're crocheting away in their own little world. And you're just watching them crochet, and you're getting a gift just by watching them in their craft. They don't even have to give you the crocheted item for you to get that gift out of it. It's all one. It's all just one thing. When we're doing that, we're just extending God's love by being who we are. That's all it takes. So we're giving without distinction. We're just giving the thing that we don't even think about as giving. It just doesn't even occur to us that we're giving anything. We're just doing the thing we love to do, and somebody else is benefiting from it. And sometimes we won't even know the person who's benefiting from it. We won't even know somebody was watching us create in that moment and falling madly in love with us, or feeling inspired, or feeling whatever they're feeling in that moment. We might never even know that. We're just doing the thing we love to do. And by doing what we love to do and being in our own joy, we're lifting others up as well. Paragraph 6. The Bible repeatedly states that you should praise God. This hardly means that you should tell him how wonderful he is. He has no ego with which to accept such praise, and no perception with which to judge it. But unless you take your part in creation, his joy is not complete because yours is incomplete. And this he does know. He knows it in his own being and its experience of his son's experience. The constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels are closed. And he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him. Okay, so God doesn't need us. I'm going to read from the plain text in a moment. God doesn't need us to tell him how wonderful he is. So we don't tell him we're grateful to tell him how wonderful he is. We share his love. We go from a place of joy and from a place of feeling full and from a place of feeling complete, and we share his love. That's how he shows gratitude. God's not happy if you're miserable. That he gets no pleasure out of your misery. And if you're miserable, it's just because you've blocked his love. You've blocked that opportunity for joy. That doesn't give him any peace or any happiness to know that you've done it. In fact, he waits patiently. His love is blocked when his channels are closed. Faucet. When you turn the faucet off, you're the channel. You're the faucet. So his love is blocked when his channels are closed, and he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him, do not extend his love, do not allow that flow of water through them. That's your only job here. It's like one of my favorite concepts from the course. You ever need to know what you need to be doing in this situation? Follow your joy. Do something kind for another human being. pretty much guaranteed to fix whatever your situation you're in if you do one or both of those things. Paragraph 6 from plain text. God does not need your worship because God does not have a separate personal self that needs to be uplifted. But when you do not accept your oneness with God, God's oneness is blocked from extending always and everywhere. When you are cut off from your joy, God's joy is incomplete. If you were truly capable of separating from God, God would not be whole. So we're not even capable of having that separation. God doesn't need us to anything. He loves us perfectly and unconditionally, just like people in your life that you love. You don't need them to anything. Even when they're not treating you with the kindest, most loving manner, you still love them unconditionally. You may not like them in that moment, but you still love them. You don't need anything from them. And what brings you the most joy is when the people you love are joyous. Even if you disagree with the decisions they're making, if it brings them joy and they're truly happy and fulfilled, it brings you joy. That's unconditional love. God's no different. That's how he sees us as well. If you fall asleep to your joy, the world stops working. That was one of the notes from this section. I like that, so I'm going to read that to you. Okay, paragraph 7. God has kept his kingdom for you, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it with your whole mind. Revelation is not enough because it is only communication from God. God does not need revelation returned to him, which would clearly be impossible, but he does want it brought to others. This cannot be done with the actual revelation. Its content cannot be expressed because it is intensely personal to the mind that receives it. It can, however, be returned by that mind to other minds through the attitude, the knowledge from the net revelation brings. So when you have had that moment of revelation, it lifts you to a higher plane. And when you're lifted to that higher plane, you can bring that to everybody else. You bring your beingness of that higher plane to everybody. You don't have to tell them, oh, you won't believe what happened to me, and I just really felt God's love because blah, 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 because they won't get it anyways. It's intensely personal to you. It's not about sharing the story. It's about being the person who has changed due to the revelation. You automatically lift everybody up with you. The entire sonship, like literally everybody lifts up with your vibration. I talk about this a lot about what's happening currently in our world and on the planet. How much of the day are you spending thinking that somebody's an idiot or the earth is going to cease to exist because of the climate? And how much time are you spending sending love to all our leaders, to all the plants, to all the animals? That's the state you want to be in. You want to be in that state where you're constantly extending love. And that's all, like spirit. That's all you see. You only see the good. And I don't mean to go into like this denial and not pretend that people aren't suffering and bad things aren't happening. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you see that suffering and stuff, believe that the little bit you can do might make all the difference, could change the entire situation. Believe that your recycling might be all it needs to turn the entire planet around. It's that belief system of not thinking, well, I need to get 20,000 more people to recycle for this to even have a tiny impact. That's not the belief system you want. You want to see the problem and you want to be part of the solution, but you want to be part of the solution with that pure belief that like, this is going to work. This solution is going to work. And because what happens is you inspire 20,000 people to start taking that action. The butterfly effect. You're connected with your beingness is connected with everyone. When you've had that revelation, the person you are now, having had that direct connection with God, having felt that peace and love of God, you're a different person. You're on a different level because that experience has happened to you. And so all you're doing is when you turn your faucet on, the water that's coming out is on a different level now because you're at a different level. So the water's at a different level. You don't have to do anything different. It's not about what you're doing. It's about keeping the faucet on so that the water can keep flowing. That's it. That's the only thing you got to do is maintain your connection. You think you have many problems, but you only have one problem. It's your lack of connection with oneness, with God and with each other. So all you got to do is keep that faucet on. That's your only job. Extend God's love, receive God's love. Extend God's love, receive God's love. Your entire purpose. It's pretty easy. Okay, plain text on paragraph 7. Even though I told you all my notes already. Your oneness with God is unchanged by your perception of separation from God, but you can only know God with your entire mind. Through revelation, you can experience God directly for a moment, but you must bring your entire mind to God for all time. Revelation cannot be brought into the world that you perceive, but it can change your experience of that world's reality. Your perception of a world must be replaced by your awareness of your oneness with God. The other note I had for this section was the whole ambiguity. That's not the word that we used. This is the word we used a couple sections ago where I think it was like in 4.1 or 4.2. It was basically the whole concept of like you have to decide. You can't be like part in and part out. And there was a specific word they used for that. I'm reading 4.3 in hopes of finding this. I found the temporary existence part. Okay, maybe it was in 4.4. What was it? Isn't it like ambiguity, or it was basically how we keep going back. We don't decide. Okay, here we go. I have this need not be for paragraph 2. I think the word's somewhere in here. I haven't found it yet. I have said that you cannot change your mind by changing your behavior, but I've also said many times that you can change your mind. The ego is like a darkened glass. What is the word? All right, y'all. I can't find it. I feel like it is in one of these sections and it's bugging me. But the point making, when we talk about deciding with your whole mind, it means we can't be in and out. And remember, I was talking, whatever section, I know it was chapter 4, whatever section we were talking about, and I said, 1 minute you think, oh my gosh, I'm awesome and I love myself, I'm so cool. And then the 30 seconds, something happens, 30 seconds later, you think, what the heck is wrong with me? Why can't I get my life together? That back and forth vacillating, that is the work of the ego. It's not the work of the spirit. So when we decide with our whole mind, you have free will. You have the ability to choose. And in this chapter, chapter 4, I feel like we're being shown, this is just what the ego does. This is just what it does. At some point, we have to actually decide that we're not going to allow these thoughts to take over and be in control. We are going to have to decide that even though we are sure something is happening and the ego is bringing all these thoughts to us and all these feelings are coming up in them, at some point we're going to have to say, this is just my perception. This is not real. I don't have to get on this roller coaster. I don't have to do this, because the more that I do this and the more I make this real, and the further I get from my own peace. And somewhere in the course, I think it was chapter 18, I was telling you guys about, it says the first obstacle to peace is that your willingness to give your peace away. You're so willing to give your peace away. It's a decision to say, I'm not going to give my peace away. I'm not going to allow this to happen. And that to me is the whole mind. The whole mind is, I've made this choice. I've chosen for spirit. I've chosen for God. I've chosen for oneness. And then when something happens that makes you question that, or you temporarily step out of that, you go, oh gosh, I forgot. I got to step right back in. I'm not going to go on this roller coaster again. It makes me sick every single time. I'm not getting on it. I'm keeping my peace. And you start standing in line and you get one foot into a roller coaster, you go, oh, I forgot. And you jump out. That's the decision, the choosingness of the decision. Okay, last paragraph. God is praised whenever any mind learns to be wholly helpful. This is impossible without being wholly harmless, because the two beliefs must coexist. The truly helpful are invulnerable because they are not protecting their egos, and so nothing can hurt them. Their helpfulness is their praise of God, and He will return their praise of Him because they are like Him, and they can rejoice together. God goes out to them and through them, and there is great joy throughout the kingdom. Every mind that is changed adds to this joy with its individual willingness to share in it. The truly helpful are God's miracle workers, whom I direct until we are all united in the joy of the kingdom. I will direct you to wherever you can be truly helpful and to whoever can follow my guidance through you. Okay, plain text. God's love is extended wherever you choose to follow the Holy Spirit's guidance. You are secure when you follow the Holy Spirit because only a personal self is vulnerable. You are one with God, and God is extended to you and through you. And this is God's joy. Changing your mind about yourself is how you share in God's joy. By following the Holy Spirit, you extend God's love in your awareness. The Holy Spirit will guide you until you have returned to full awareness of your oneness with God. So the main point of this is to help one another. And the only way to be truly helpful is to not harm one another. So we lift each other up without harm. And we do it, and that's how God's love flows. There's a line from the Course, I am here only to be truly helpful. And to be truly helpful is to see everybody as innocent and perfect without judgment. Everybody is worthy of God's love. There's no judgment and there's no attack. And that is the only goal that we have, is to see that completeness in each other and let our faucet flow. And no matter what anybody else is doing, receive the love behind what's happening. Everything is either love or a call for love. And when you see somebody behaving in a way that is not ideal, you know that that's a call for love. And you don't even look at their behavior, you look past it and know that they're complete and whole and worthy of God's love. So that, my friends, is chapter 4. Thank you for joining me. And we happen to be hitting this at the end of the year. So I hope you all will enjoy the video. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Bye, everyone.